Welcome everyone to Common Sense Choices, and I'm Linda Toupin. You're here. You are here. Thank you so much, guys. We have been together, you and I. I love this. This is where you hang out with me and I hang out with you. And now I get to introduce you to all these wonderful people that have been in my life for so many years. So thank you for joining me. For those of you, this is our very first time. I am on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. I have carrier pigeons, but the best way to get my podcast and make sure that you never miss an episode is to go to lndiana.com. lndiana.com, go up there to the top right-hand corner and click sign up. And it's a little two-step system, so make sure that you look for the email confirming that you do want to hear from me. And I love it that you want to hear from me because you and I are on this journey together. Well, in the background, you see our mantra. And so let's say it together. I even have my coffee cup ready this morning. It has my saying on it, so I make sure that I say these words to myself every morning. It's all about personal responsibility. So are you ready? I am where I am by the choices I have made or I have allowed others to make for me. So let's say it again. I am where I am by the choices I have made or I have allowed others to make for me. Well, it feels good to be in charge. It feels good to have choices, and you make 35,000 choices a day, and today you clicked play, and that put you and I together. Well, our first episode, we talked about those choices, and I gave you homework to begin to monitor some of those 35,000 choices that at the end of your life will determine where your life has been and where it's going. The second episode was all about the crease in the piece of paper and how we're programmed from the time that we're born, and all the programming, especially that happened in the past 2 years, and much of it being very toxic, and how to begin to get rid of some of those toxic thoughts were covered in episode 3 with our guest speaker, Pat Pearson, psychotherapist. If you missed that, please grab that. It's incredible. The fourth episode was my Christmas episode, and it was about hope and healing. And it was some of the things that I personally did to feel better about some of the anger that I was actually feeling from everything that we've all gone through together, so that I could heal myself so that I could help others heal as well. Well, last week we met my Dr. Edwards, my Dr. Lena Edwards, that you all have heard me talk about for years and years and years and years. And she worked with you on the 10 things that you could do to improve your natural immunity. And she also talked about some of the things for those of you who are vaccinated that you might be doing that's actually weakening your vaccine. So be sure to grab that episode. Well, today I have an honor and privilege of introducing someone very special to you. He's been in my life. I remember meeting him when my children were in high school. So they're in their mid-30s. So it's been probably about 15 to 18 years that I have known the man that you are going to have the pleasure of meeting today. His name is Glenn Brown, and I'm going to introduce him to you professionally, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about what he means to me. First of all, Glenn Brown lives in Southern Indiana, you guys. And boy, I know that I have a pretty good percentage of my audience that is in Louisville and Southern Indiana. So you're going to be able to work with him if you want to. How exciting is that? And for those of you who live away, he has an on-demand service where you can actually work out with him. So stay tuned for more details about all of that. But Glenn Brown, listen to this, you guys. All right, is the 2018 USA Adult Men's National Yoga Champion and placed 4th in the internationals. Okay, that means in the world. So I think he knows what he's doing, okay? He has been competing and coaching for the Yoga Championship since 2003, and he is the 14th time Indiana regional champion. Duh. Before winning the nationals in 2018, he placed number five nationally in 2016 and number 2 in 2017. And guys, for those of us, and that's most everybody in my audience who have big goals, they work hard, they're developing a skill. That's what it looks like in incremental bits, a little at a time, constantly moving up and getting better and better. Professionally, he is a professor at Indiana University Southeast. Congratulations, Glenn. Since 2016, teaching yoga and Tai Chi history and method. He also founded Lionflow Yoga in 2010 based on his home practice. Okay. He is the owner and manager of Array Studio, and he teaches Lionflow Yoga and other styles as well. He is an artist, okay, and he is a self-published author and looks forward. I love this, Glenn. I love this in your bio. Looks forward to putting more work out there and striving to be a uniforming force in the health and wellness community. And Glenn, you probably don't know this, but on the first episode, I said one of the 3 reasons I'm doing this is to help us all find our common ground in what seems to be sometimes a very divisive world. And it's only natural that we were attracted to each other, and I've been attracted to you for all of these years. But let me tell you, if you can bring him on the screen with me and welcome my friend, Glenn Brown.
Hello. It's great to be here.
Oh, Glenn, my first remembrance, I'm going to tell you a story. My first remembrance was my children started working with you. And they were in high school. They were driving, because I remember my son, Neil, now he'll be 36, Glenn. This is going to make you feel really old. He'll be 36 this summer. He was in high school, and you were doing a challenge in Bikram class where you had to go every morning at like 5 a.m. or something. And it was a challenge to do, I think, 21 days or something. And I remember him getting up. His bedroom was across the hall, and him going out every morning before he went to high school to take that Bikram class. And I could see the difference in his attitude, his body, his energy. And then my daughter started, and then they convinced me that I probably could do this. And I remember just being on my mat for the first time in your living room, probably close to where you're sitting right now, and just falling in love with you. And I know that a lot of people who are watching this right now, Glenn, they haven't tried yoga, or they're scared of yoga, or maybe they tried it once and they just thought, oh my gosh, it's not for me. I just want you to know, I don't know where I would be today had I not met you, because I've experienced different yoga studios that weren't you. But I just remember your kindness, your gentleness, your attention to detail, and how like you remembered from week to week, if I was able to just go a quarter of an inch deeper into a pose, and you would praise me. And that just made me want to do it more. And then I think probably I did it to see if I could do it. And then I did it to see if I could improve. But then I learned to do it because it felt so good. And the times in my life, Glenn, for the past 18 years where I have felt the worst are the times, the weeks that went by, that I wasn't in a studio and I wasn't on my mat. So I know what a difference it makes. So Glenn,
Right.
tell us how it all started for you.
Well, it actually started for me in high school. I was pretty good academically, but around my junior year, I had issue with depression. Both my parents were diagnosed with chronic illnesses. My mother had Parkinson's, and my father had cirrhosis. Wasn't even a drinker, so that was a surprise, right? And it weighed pretty heavily on me. And compounding on that, I was the last of 6 kids, and I was the last one in the house. So it was a really new dynamic for me at that time. 16 years old and trying to find my way in the world without all my siblings who told me how to see things before, right?
Right.
So I struggled in school that year, and my guidance counselor was very kind to me because he could look over my record, and I was had a decent IQ and a decent history, and I told him what was going on. So I'd already fulfilled all my required classes by that point in time, and so I got to just choose whatever I wanted to finish high school. So I did all art and music and drama, and I found that in arts there was therapy for me. It was my coping mechanism. And with that, I started to search into more arts because I kind of fell away from doing the high school sports I'd grown up with, swimming and wrestling, and I really didn't see a future doing that in college because I knew if I was going to go to college, I was going to have to pay for it myself. So I couldn't really equate in my mind, 40 hours of training in a sport plus 20 hours of college classes plus homework plus do a couple of jobs to be able to pay for it all. I couldn't make the equation work in my brain, right? So I focused on arts and I found Kung Fu uh, when I was a senior in high school. And I loved it, but I was really, really terrible at it. I mean, terrible, right? So, if, for instance, they try to teach me to, bring my leg back and kick this punching bag. It's called a hook kick. I had so little coordination and flexibility at that time that when I try to do that kick, the punching bag would knock me over, right? So after a couple of months in this private kung fu school, I was actually let go. My teacher told me I wasn't flexible or coordinated,
Oh
and
my gosh, Glenn.
and kicked me out of the school. So that was really hard for me, and I've had a lot of feelings about that teacher over the years. But what I find is he probably said the most important thing to me that anybody ever had. He he gave me motivation because after that experience, I exercised every day on my own, right? Working on that flexibility and coordination that I lacked in so much, right? So
I mean, I'm trying.
after that,
We've got some
yeah,
pictures. Throw them up right now of your championship. I mean, I'm trying as the audience is looking at these pictures. I, I, I I'm trying to even wrap my brain about a Glenn Brown who was that not flexible. I just
right.
can't even think about that.
Just imagine 18 years or 17 years of not ever stretching, right? So after that experience, I started, like I said, practicing every day. I held myself accountable, and flexibility and strength and coordination came pretty quickly with that discipline, right? And before the end of high school, I was telling people if they asked me, like, what are you doing with your future? Where are you going to college? I mean, everybody's asking these questions. I said, I'm going to be a writer, an artist, a yoga teacher, and a kung fu teacher. And here I am as a 40 something year old. And those are exactly the things I've done uh, for over 20 years now. So my phone was ringing there.
Well,
And, oh,
it's the
go
power.
ahead, Linda.
It's the power of affirmation. I mean, you spoke the words. You knew what you couldn't do and didn't want to do, and then you said it, and then you went after it. And you're speaking my language right now.
Right. Now, that's kind of the personal accountability side, because I could have taken what that teacher said and just hated him for it or felt like he had done something to me.
Right.
But instead, I took it on myself. Like, how do I work on these issues that have been pointed out very bluntly, right? And so taking on that personal accountability, uh, that led me to my teachers. So that's kind of getting to the point there. That helped me find my kung fu teacher and my yoga teacher later because one day I walked to Louisville. This is about a year after getting kicked out of a kung fu school. And while I was walking in front of Louisville, I met a kung fu teacher and a student who were in town for a international kung fu competition at the Galt House. And we got to chatting, and we ended up hanging out the whole weekend. And he turned out his name is Keith Dewan, and he is from England, right? And after a very short time getting to know each other, um, he invited me to a teacher training in England, and that that moment of feeling like somebody believed in me, right? Uh, that changed everything for me. Kind of like the guy telling me I wasn't good enough, right? So when it comes to teachers, it's important to try more than one because for myself, the first yoga class I attended, I hated. It was I thought it was terrible at the time. It was at the Y. It was simple. It was mostly like 80-year-old people in the class, and
Careful,
I
Glenn.
was
Be careful.
right. And I was an arrogant 18-year-old, like, what is this? It's not what I imagined. But I went on to try more teachers, right? And it's important you find something, one, that you're motivated to do. So you find value in it. But two, it's important to find that teacher who believes in you. Like you can tell that they see more of your potential than you do, right? And
Yes.
they push you forward, and they get they give you kindness and motivation because they're approaching you from a place where they can see your possibilities, right? That you don't even see yet because you're not aware of the processes that they're taking you through. Finding those teachers is worth the time of going through a few to find what works for you, because you'll
I have
find some good ones and you'll find some bad ones, right?
I I have a question for you because I've given people this advice. I think it's good advice. You can tell me. But if I was starting yoga with no knowledge of it, not very flexible, not really haven't don't have any kind of workout routine, I would check out a few studios, and then before I got in the middle of a bunch of classes, I would try to sign up for some personal instruction just to cover some really simple basics. Do you think that's wise?
You know, absolutely. But as well, it's important that we don't expect all the everything to be perfect about our first attempt, right? Because oftentimes it's what holds us back, is we want to
Right.
have the right outfit, to feel the right way, for the weather to be right, and for the sun to not be in our eyes. Like we're looking for everything about the situation to be perfect before we walk in. I would suggest breaking down the door by doing the hardest thing first and just walking into class, right? Uh, Private lessons can be good, but they can also be a difficult place to start if you have no knowledge of the thing you're walking into yet. The
Okay.
crash course of a regular class is a good way to kind of break the ice. Let yourself be bad, let yourself try to interpret the things, and don't overanalyze it during the experience, right? You'll have a better perspective to analyze it from once you've done the whole class and you're laying there relaxed and you feel what the benefits are, as opposed to just being upset with yourself for not doing postures perfectly or just right first time. Uh, just letting yourself get in there and do what you're capable of today under the guidance of the teacher. That's important. Private lessons are great. It's a good part of my business. I like to make money, right? But not everybody can afford private lessons. So it's good to just kind of start where you are, you know?
Well, so if I'm out here and I'm thinking, okay, I'd like to do this. I'd like to try this, and they're looking at the menu, so to speak, of a yoga studio, and there's all these words they've never heard of, and there's hot yoga, and there's warm yoga, and there's flow yoga, and there's Bikram yoga. Where do they start with all that?
Right. I mean, the easiest thing to do is to start with one that fits your schedule, right? Because we build up a lot of things, like it says it's advanced, it says it's slow, and we're trying to figure out what that means compared to what we think yoga is, right? Well, really, all styles of class, whether they call it advanced or intermediate or slow flow or fast flow or vinyasa, they're all just more or less postures at different uh, paces, right? And if we go in and listen to our body, if we try to just practice safely where we are today, all classes are really the same in that regard, right? They're just more or less postures. And if we can
Right.
go in with the mentality that we don't have to be perfect at all of them the first time, we can really try whatever class is good for our schedule. Because that can be the hardest thing in the beginning, is finding something that fits into the time we have available.
Well, I love the steps that you've given us so far. First of all, find something you're motivated to do. I think that's the hardest thing for most people when they're looking for any kind of physical activity because you name it, I've done it. I mean, you name it, I've done it. And I'm not doing those anymore. And there's a reason because I'm not motivated to do it. Like if you told me I
Right,
had to run a treadmill, I'll just be 100 pounds overweight and die of heart disease. I mean, because I won't do it because I hate it so much. And I think that's such wise advice. And I think that's why I've loved yoga so much because I'm not in competition with anything. I go there and everything I do makes my body feel better. I'm so much more flexible. I can move. And I think that's one of the things that as I got older, Glenn, and this is, I want my audience to hear me say this. As I got older, I started looking 20 years, 30 years, 40 years in advance at the people that I wanted to be like. And I wanted to move. I wanted to be able to sit in the floor and without using my arms, get up, just get up with my legs, get up with my core. I wanted to be able to bend over. And this is the thing I found, Glenn, that when I don't do it, I get stiff. And when I do it, the world is at my fingertips and I love it so much. And then the fact that you're finding a teacher who believes in you, those are, and then finding something that fits into your schedule. Such great advice, Glenn.
well, thank you. Right.
So
Now, go ahead. Yeah.
no, that's okay. I am a Christian woman. And when I was first looking at yoga, I would have people say these bizarre things to me, like, "Oh, you don't want to do that as a Christian woman. That's a religion." And I'm like, I've been to a couple of classes. It doesn't feel like a religion to me. And then over time I was like, okay, anybody can take anything to any degree they want to take it to. Can we talk about that for just a second? Because I mean,
Yeah.
you're obviously a professor. This is your life. You've surely come across this objection before. And I'm like, I just wish more women who are Christians, more men who are Christians would open their mind to this because it's so helpful as healing.
Right. And like it says in the Bible, your body is a temple, right? But we treat our temple like a dumpster. Right?
You
So,
would love you would love Dr. Edwards. That's exactly what she said.
right. So, uh yoga, that's a common misconception, right? And yoga is in many different religions, right? But the difference is yoga is a philosophy, and that philosophy is used in many different religions, right? There's actually seven main schools of Indian philosophy, right? And yoga is one of them. And those philosophies are used in different religions: Hinduism, Sikhism, Jainism, there's Buddhism, there's a lot of them. There are a lot of isms, right? But the yoga itself, in its conception, one of the oldest books in the world is called the Rig Veda, right? And it comes from early yoga times and early religion called Brahmanism. And that yoga is mentioned for the first time in that book as a way to prepare for different things, right? A way to prepare for sitting down, a way to prepare for deep breathing, right? A way to prepare the body for all sorts of things. And that's really all yoga has ever been, with different trappings and different teachers around it. It is literally ancient kinesiology, right? The study of movement and the effect of that movement on our biochemistry. And
What a great simple
so,
explanation, Glenn.
right, so everything we do is yoga in its philosophy. Closing our fists and opening our fists. That would be an effect on the body. It's a physical movement. How we're breathing. There's Yoga just took the time to break down every different possible variation of moving and of breath and of their combinations, and did the scientific process to find out what those are good for, right? So over time, I mean, back in the day when you did a yoga class, excuse me, it wasn't like we see it today. A studio, people doing the same thing. Uh, Yoga teachers were approached as actual MDs, like your personal doctor back in the day. You'd go to them, and they'd give you a few poses and few breathing exercises for your particular needs, right? As yoga has become more popular and, kind of put into the corporate times and into different cultures, we like to do it as a group and as a community. But in the older times, it was really more personally based kinesiology. You'd get your little physical therapy series from your yoga teacher, right? And those yoga teachers were from different backgrounds, right? Um, Nowadays, you could still walk into a yoga studio and hear a lot of religious talk, right? They might do a lot of chanting. They might have lots of pictures of Krishna and Vishnu on their walls. They might be leaning toward the religions that also incorporate yoga. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that they're trying to push that religion on you.
No.
That's just what they found on their journey. But
Right.
even still, like for myself, I mean, I was raised Christian, but I'm a Taoist, which most people don't know what that means. But it's another philosophy, right? I didn't like to be put things pushed on me. I didn't like the chanting. I didn't want to pray to anybody. Uh, I just wanted the physical art, right, and what it was good for. And so I've maintained that position, and that actually helps me as a teacher because a lot of students come in like you, Linda, where they're afraid of being encroached on by another religion, and that can happen. But it's the smaller percentage. It's just what we're worried about, and that's why I would say make sure to try more than one studio and teacher because some teachers just approach it from the physical practice side. How is this physically going to help you? What are the details to doing this particular method? And that's really where we need to start because of all the lofty and esoteric things that you could accomplish or study, you have to start with foundation, right? And the foundation is just physical movement and coordinated breath, right?
Well, and I've never heard you do that explanation before, but it was exactly what I was looking for in this particular podcast because I have always looked at this from a movement standpoint, from a body standpoint, from a physical standpoint. Hi there.
It's
Hi
my
there,
boy.
young.
Look, he's advertising for me too. See, there's my
Look at there.
logo.
Good for you. But I've always looked at it from that standpoint. And that's why I've loved it so much because I know, like, I went, well, of course, during COVID, that was, ugh. Anyway, but I remember there was, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 weeks that I wasn't in a studio. I wasn't doing, I have to have the studio. I don't do well without the studio. And so, I remember being on my mat and starting through some of the poses, and I literally, like, I know it was probably mental, but I could have swore it was physical. I could literally feel the blood going into my joints. I could feel everything opening up in my body. I just felt everything come back alive because I'd been driving so much and my hips were so tight, my shoulders were so tight, and it was just like life coming into me from those movements. And at the end of class, usually a teacher will let you do like your own, whatever's in your routine that she didn't cover or they didn't cover. And I always go back to a couple of poses that I know my spine needs, I know my brain needs, and I know my shoulders need. And I just feel life coming into me. I feel life coming into my joints. I feel 10, 20, 30 years younger when I do those things. And so, thank you for covering that. And I want my friends, because most of my friends who are watching this are Christians. I don't want you to ever be scared of this because, like Glenn said, check out the studio, figure out what's going on there, and I think you'll find what I found, something that I will literally do, Glenn, for the rest of my life. I hope when I'm in my 90s, I am still on my mat and I'm still able to do what I'm able to do today.
Right. That's great. A word on that is just we can approach things with so much fear, like what will it be like? Um, how's the teacher going to talk to me? They're not going to call me out by name, are they? There are so many things that we go into class worried about. And so there's a saying I like to share with students and teachers in particular, because they can become terrible students, is make sure to empty your cup when you walk into class. Because if we go in, we think we know everything, or we think we want to be treated, with kid mittens, we're really limiting the experience based on the perspective we came in with, which is it's limiting because we came in to learn something we don't know, that we have no experience with, right?
Well,
So
nice.
go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
Oh, so allowing ourselves to be vulnerable enough to learn is the first most important step to acquiring any type of knowledge. So we have the things we want and the benefits we're looking for from the yoga, but we don't know how we're going to get there, right? So being self, you know, feeling strong enough in yourself just to go in and let yourself be taught, right? And to have that analyzing after the class, like you said, you feel blood moving back into your body. Um, a good point to make is when it comes to faith, whatever our faith is in, is that faith doesn't take defense. Faith isn't defensiveness itself, right?
Right.
Faith actually takes no defense. Faith takes you standing there with your faith, right?
So
And with
true.
that, you get to approach things as who you are from where you are, and you don't have to feel like you have to defend it or that something is trying to attack you, because you don't need any of that fear because you have
That
faith,
is so
right?
so beautifully said. Well, Glenn, I know that people are going to want to find you, and you've got some wonderful resources that you've made available, some workouts for people that they can access for free. And then you also have on demand, very reasonably priced programs. So, can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah. So since the pandemic happened, I was really not a fan of offering videos or taking them in the beginning, right? People try to talk into it, and I was just like, no way. We live in the age of plagiarism. I'm just going to lose everything I came up with, right? But I got over myself. I had to teach for the college online with my phone for over a year and a half. And it just helped me get over myself, right? So during the pandemic, since I teach out of my home, I can't really have 50 people in a class, even if there wasn't a pandemic going on. So I realized I could really reach the whole world or whoever is interested if I just allow myself to put these videos up. And that was hard for me, talking about feeling personally confident and doing things like imagine the self analyzation that goes on when you're watching the yoga videos that you taught. What's
Right.
the room look like, and how you feel about your house and yourself and how you sound, and it's a real rigmarole that you have to get through just to put the videos up. So I had to
Everybody who's watching this that has their own business in their home knows exactly what you just said. They
yeah,
all relate to everything you just said right then, for sure.
I mean, you're looking at like stains on your walls, and like you just see everything, right? And then you kind of have to get over it. You have to post it and maybe make the next video better, right? So I made an on-demand site. I have lots of content on there. Of course, over time, my hope is to take videos with better backgrounds and better sound quality, right? But there's a lot of stuff up there. A good place to get started if you have trouble, like Linda said, practicing without that group setting. To have a little voice in your ear at home can kind of take you to a better place of personal accountability. Like we can get ourselves to do it if we've got that voice in our ear, right? So there's good places to start, and I teach Lionflow Yoga. That's my baby. That's the style I came up with. But at the college, I teach about as many styles as I can fit into the semester. So when it came to making an on-demand site, instead of just having line flow classes and just having 3 or 4 videos up there, I put up all the different styles of yoga I teach. So there's probably 60 videos up there. between full-length classes, short homework series, which are a good place to start, and tutorials about poses, which are great for like that private lesson aspect that Linda was talking about. It's good to know these little details about each posture so we're not just jamming ourselves into a cookie cutter shape the best we understand. It's good to know like where the weight should be and what your leverage should be. So the classes, the homework workouts, and the tutorials, they're all on that on-demand site, and she'll send you a link for that, right? But
And
it's a great place to practice at home.
they can access that through your website, lionflow.
Yes,
Is it lionflow.com?
lionflow.com, and on the home page, if you just read through and scroll through, you'll see the bold letters that say on demand, right? And
Okay.
there's a link there, easy enough to click on. Now you can subscribe monthly. That's if you want to access every video that I've put on there. But if that's a little too much to start, which is like $15 a month, you could just look for one video at a time. You can rent videos for $1, or you can buy and download videos for $3, right? And if you need any help with that, you can actually reach me through the website and say, where should I get started? And
I love it.
I'd be more
I
than
love
happy to
it.
help.
I love it. Well, Glenn, as you were talking, there was one point that I didn't make earlier, and I want to say this real quickly as we wrap up. I remember in one of my first classes, you said to me, I'm not going to use a bunch of these words that you won't know what the meaning is. And because I found that my students, if I throw out a bunch of names of poses or words that nobody's ever heard of, then they spend their entire time trying to think, how would you say that? How would you pronounce that? And what does that even mean? And so I grew up without ever knowing. So, but it's funny how over all these years, when a teacher says a word, then it's like, oh, I think that means this. I've never taken the time to learn the words because it doesn't matter.
Right. It doesn't matter unless it does, right? To you,
For me, it
right?
does not matter.
And for me, I mean, it's kind of it's about cultural appropriation, right? There's this tendency to try and fit the part, and that just rubs me all the wrong way. I can't just fit the part. I have to be myself.
Well,
Not going to wear the
you,
little spot on my forehead or wear the particular garb or try to say the particular words because I feel like that's disingenuous. And the practices will really be taught and carried on through time, not just by the geographic location they came from, but by the people who practice them, right? So the people that put in the time, they will be able to help you with their experience, right? The people that put in the time to just looking the part, they can't help you with much of anything.
no, they
Like they can
can't.
make you feel uncomfortable, they can provide you with the status quo class, give you inappropriate adjustments or say lots of words you don't understand to try to fit the part. But that doesn't help you learn details. That doesn't help motivate you. That
No.
doesn't help you do much of anything unless you're trying to learn those particular things, right?
Well, Glenn, I can't begin to thank you enough what you have meant to me and my family. You and your family are so precious to us. And I know a great deal of our health as a family is attributed to what we learned from you, what we continue to practice from you. And for those of you who are watching, you'll want to go as your homework assignment this week, go to Lionflow, Lionflow, lionflow.com. And that on demand is there. Plus, in the text with this video, there will be a free link to some YouTube practices that Glenn has made available to you. But you guys, just supporting Glenn is a great way to thank him for being with us today. And Glenn, is there anything else you'd like to say in closing?
Yes, I mean, if I could ramble on about my story a little bit more, that'd be great.
Please, that'd be great.
Right. So I stopped with my Kung Fu teacher earlier, right? So that was
Yes.
kind of the story of having a teacher throw me out and have a teacher take me in, right? Now, that leads to some other good points because what I learned from my Kung Fu teacher in England, I love personally, but nobody else cared about, right? I came back to teach it, nobody cared. who's this guy? Who's trying to teach me? Why would I do this? It doesn't look exciting enough, right? That was hard for me in the beginning. And when I first started trying to teach, that was my experience. Trying to teach Kung Fu and the yoga I practice at home. That was like the first stab at trying to offer Lionflow Yoga, and it failed, right?
Yeah.
In that failure, though, I continued to practice on my own, had that personal accountability. It was important to me, even though it wasn't important to other people. And eventually, I went to try another yoga class. And that's what's important. We talk about making sure to try more than one teacher. And when I went to my next yoga class, it was a hot yoga class, and the lady teaching it was extraordinary, extraordinarily beautiful and kind and intimidating. And I left that experience thinking, wow, there's more than one style of yoga. I really like this style. It's more physical. I can feel the challenge, kind of like doing a kung fu class. And but it was costly. I prefer practicing at home back in that time, especially because I was broke. Now, a couple weeks later, that teacher actually sent me a gift certificate to come back into the studio. And when I did, um, I mean that again, that was somebody giving me personal encouragement, telling me they believed in my potential. And I went back with some friends, and it turned out that me and this teacher were interested in each other, and we kind of talked through our mutual friends
I think I
to
know where
start,
this is going. I've never heard
yeah, to
this story.
start dating, right? So that lady ended up becoming my wife. But before that happened, she she gave me encouragement. She wanted to sponsor me to become a teacher of Bikram Yoga or hot yoga, even though I couldn't afford studio packages. You know, really, I just felt like this young, broke dishwasher at the pizza place that lives at his parents' house. That's what I felt like, right? And here's this entrepreneur, beautiful woman who owns a couple businesses and has an amazing yoga practice, trying to give me encouragement. I had to get over myself just to accept the help, right? And sometimes that's an important lesson for us is that we can't do it all by ourselves right off the bat. Sometimes we need a little help to push us and get us moving forward, and we have to get over ourselves to do that, right? And getting over myself to do that in that time, my wife accepted me for who I was. I got to become successful later. I didn't have to start off that way to find love and to find passion in my career. I just had to start off with that passion and with that willingness to be vulnerable enough to let somebody help me and to learn, right? Now, to get to the end of the story, because I know I'm taking extra time here, that style of yoga was just a specific form, and I had to kind of let go of the other things I was practicing for a time, just so I could be better at the thing I was focused on. Right? That's an important point because a lot of times we just try to do everything we do with what we already know. So, say we were weightlifters, we try to do everything we learn as a weightlifter, right? Whereas if we're trying to learn new arts, oftentimes we have to let everything else go long enough to find out how to do this new thing, right?
Right.
So after spending some time with that, I spent like a year focused on just the Bikram. I kind of got the itch to start teaching the style nobody cared about again, my personal style, the Lionflow Yoga, right? And so when people ask for private lessons, that's more what I would focus on teaching them, right? And the Lionflow Yoga came from a blend of the practicing at home and the things I learned from my Kung Fu teacher. One of those was to build your own warm up for the Kung Fu class that you can offer to your students. So my warm up was called Lion Flow Yoga, and I'd spent lots of time developing it because I could not contact that teacher in England again. I tried for many years, and it was very disheartening for me to not be able to communicate with him again because I wanted to learn more. But since I wasn't able to, I just ran with the steps he gave me. Work on your home practice, develop the warm up for class, become the master of learning things as opposed to just the master of one form, right? And that really stuck with me. And even though I only got to spend 2 weeks with this individual, I would always include him on my teacher bios because I felt like that experience with him and with my wife, those things helped make me who I was. Didn't matter how long the trainings were or whatever, they had heavy influence. And later on, 21 years later on, after meeting my teacher the first time, he found me again by doing a Google search of his own name and seeing that I had given him props in my bio, right? And so, because I gave him credit for teaching me 21 years ago, that actually led to the opportunity to communicate with him again. And the first thing I had to say to him when he wrote me uh, was that, "Would you take me back as a student?" Right? And he did. So it's a wonderful story to me. Maybe other people might not care, it might not seem as significant, but the he influenced me enough for me to continue what he taught me, and he taught me enough about respect to to continue to respect him when I talked about what I'd learned. And because of that small fact, the small note of giving respect to the teachers that influenced me, I was actually able to reconnect with this teacher 2 decades later to start off where I'd left off before, and to help cure some of the discord in myself because I never got to complete that training, right? So that opportunity only came because of respect, right? A lot of times in the modern world, you have teachers try to stand up by themselves. I did it myself. No one else taught me. It's all about me. You know, it might just be this other style with a couple different poses in it, but it's mine, and I'm the person. I'm great, and I did this. And that's a very egotistical way to approach teaching ancient arts because there is a method of lineage. You learn from a teacher, you respect the teacher, you passed on what the teacher taught you. Now, in the modern times, we have this cancel culture where if somebody ever does something bad in their entire lifetime, we're going to unwrite them from history. Doesn't matter if they did something good or if they did something bad or if they changed the world in some significant ways. We're going to unwrite them from history because we no longer agree with everything about their personal life. I think that's a misnomer. I think that's a delusional way of passing on history, right?
Wow.
So even though some of my teachers, my yoga teacher Bikram, you can watch lots of stuff about him. His name's been run through the mud, and he's no longer in our country. Probably won't come back. But he was a great teacher. He did some things in his personal life I don't know about, right? I've heard things, but I don't actually know, right? What I know is the physical things I learned about yoga practice from him. And that learning those things help me help other people. They help me find my potential and develop it, right? And so it's important to know, like, respect your teachers or at least what they taught you. Even if the individual is no longer respectable, the things that you learned are invaluable, right? And that
Wow.
they're they're specific. You know, once you make a creation, it is its own thing, right?
That's right.
It's not the individual, it is something that has been created to move out into the world and to cause its own ripple. It's important, I guess. My point is the respect involved. Like, I think somebody's ready to be a teacher when they're ready to teach without having to tear down their own teachers to make themselves look better,
Wow.
right?
Glenn, I am so glad that you are teaching at the university level. Everything you just said in the past, 5 or 6 minutes, giving respect, you can't, I believe one of your sentences was, you can't teach ancient arts with a perspective from today. I mean, it has to be about respect and giving credit to where credit is due, and the harmful effects of cancel culture, because there's not a person watching this today that hasn't made mistakes in their own life at some point or the other. And that doesn't mean your life doesn't have value and that something great can't come from all the good stuff that you did. Glenn, I'm just glad that you're a voice on college campuses today. You have changed my life, and I honor and respect you for what you have done for me and my family. So thank you. Thank you for being my
Oh,
guest.
thank you so much for having me, and it has
Thank
been
you.
such an honor to know your family over the years. It saddens me that you guys live too far away to come to regular classes anymore. But
Well, you know what? I'm
I
just going
I
to have
will
to tell.
always remember the beginning. The beginning was the Tupins. Like 5 of my 6 private lessons a week would be with the Tupins, right? So I'll
Well,
never
and
forget.
well, we're just thankful for you and what you have meant to us, and what great things that you have put out into the universe here by being on this podcast today. And it is my prayer that it will be heard by tens of thousands of people, and that many will be blessed and given courage, and not be afraid to try something new. Glenn, thank you so very, very much. And for all of you who are watching here today, thank you for being part of our Common Sense podcast. And I'm going to leave my podcast today with a new item from my store over at lndiana.com. Stuff you didn't know you needed store. Not only it is my coffee mug that's over there, but I have these really cute hoodies, you guys, and they're great. You guys are going to want one of these. They're warm and fuzzy, and they're great for going to yoga practice. Anyway, and they've got choices down the side and got my initials on them. And they're real big. This is a large, you guys. I wear a size 8 in a women's clothes, and so you can see that they're really big and comfy. I've washed it several times. And so anyway, head on over there. You guys, thank you for being with us. Do your homework. Go to lionflow.com. Check out On Demand. And we can't wait to hear about your first yoga experience or a future yoga experience. All right, you guys, start the music. We're ready to wrap it up. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Linda. Don't forget to buy your coffee mugs. Yeah.
Over at lindapeople.com. All right, you guys.